So in February, my oldest brother, the one I moved to Vegas with, got really, really sick. He ended up in the hospital. And so for a couple weeks, like 2-3 weeks straight, I'd go to work and immediately go hang out with him at the hospital for 3-4 hours, go home and repeat. And I just did that every day. Then the weekends was I'd go hang out with him, do what I could. And he ended up dying 3 weeks later. And sadly enough, not to be the saddest person ever, but my marriage was coming to an end and we knew it. And we were just trying to kind of hold on to get through my brother's stuff. So I was dealing with some stuff. So my running became, just really my escape. And I, on weekends, again, I had Friday, Saturday, and Sundays off. And Friday, Saturday, Sunday was just, I'm out of here. And it was, out to the desert running and it wasn't anything nuts, but, run for 8 miles, 10 miles, 12 miles. And that's when the miles started to tick up because I was probably running through some stuff. And, and I'd head out like, I'm just going to go out for an hour. And next thing I was gone for 3. And it's like, wow, I just did, 15 miles.
This is your host, Brendan, and you're listening to the Ordinary to Ultra podcast. This podcast is all about helping you run your first ultramarathon and beyond. Tune in to hear new and experienced ultra runners share how they got into running in the first place, what inspired them to run an ultra, training and race day tips, and the gripping story of their first ultramarathon. Prepare yourself to be inspired as you hear stories of grit, sometimes failure, but ultimately triumph when our guests finally cross the finish line. Hey, Josh, thanks so much for joining me today, man. I
appreciate it.
Super excited to dive into your story today.
Thank you.
Josh, I'd love to have you share just a little bit about yourself, who you are, how old you are, where you're from, where you are now, what your family looks like, what you do for work, just that sort of thing.
Okay. My name is Joshua Law. I grew up in a tiny town, 300 people in Illinois, middle of 5 children. Moved out to Las Vegas, where I currently reside, in 1998. I currently work for the police department here in town. I've been doing that for 18 years. Family-wise, I like to tell a story because to me it's kind of a funny story. So I've been married twice. I recently got married 6 weeks ago. Congratulations! Thank you very much. From my first marriage, she had a son that to this day, his name's Anthony. I consider my kid. I was with him since he's 5. He's 28 now. And now with my new wife, she has a 6-year-old daughter named Paris. So I'm a new stepdad again. So that's kind of my family right there. So yeah, kind of interesting and different.
Sweet.
So, but it's awesome.
Roped back into young kids again.
Yeah. It's actually exciting. When you think, I'm probably over that, then one comes in your life and you're like, yep, no, it's good.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. Police, you said. So, do you typically run before work, after work? How do you get your runs in around police?
Mainly, well, it's kind of mixed. Most of my long miles come on our weekends. Fortunately for us, we have 3 days off every week. We work 4 10s. But some days, if I need extra miles, I'll actually run into work. It's about 6.5, 7 miles there. So I'll run in, do my thing, and then run home. So that's if I need to pick up, for the race I'm training for, that's actually in a week from our recording here, a couple days. If I need to get some more, I'll run in, run back, and it gets me about a half marathon. So, but most of our runs, my wife and I will do after work, get 4 or 5 miles in there. So it's spread out through morning, night, weekends. So.
Yeah, dang. That's sweet that you could run into work. Yeah. But yeah, 6 miles there, 6 miles back.
And it's, the way there is pretty chill, pretty downhill. The way back is very not downhill. So after you're a little tired and everything, you get going. It's only like 2.5 miles up this big old hill, and then it kind of flattens out a little bit. But it wakes you up from a long day.
It wakes you up after. I don't want to be woken up after a long day. But good for you. Oh man. And do you find that you're when you get into work that you're sweaty? Do you shower?
No,
or you just,
I don't.
Maybe you're not sweaty.
Weird. I don't care.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
run in
I'm just
yeah,
curious
and plus,
because like
it's like I
I'd be
said,
a
about six,
mess the
and
rest
so,
of the
but
day.
it's pretty chill. So yeah, I don't care. I deal with it. So
Cool, cool. No, that's fine, dude. Good for you. I know several people who, yeah, said they run. I think just, yeah, 2 weeks ago. I think you listened to the episode too with Eric, and he said he ran, or maybe he even biked to work sometimes, preparing for his 100. Um, yeah, do what you got to
yeah,
do
exactly.
to
Yeah,
get
you
the
squeeze
miles
it in when
in.
you can. So
Yeah. Well, sweet man. Thanks for the intro. Josh, I'd love to have you now share when and how you got into running in the first place.
So through high school and everything, I didn't, do track or anything, but I played sports. I was, played basketball and golf and stuff. I was a very average athlete on a really terrible basketball team. And then when I got to college, I unfortunately did what a lot of people do, decided to put on a ton of weight, having a little good time. But as soon as I graduated college, about a day or two after I graduated, my oldest brother was living in Arizona and he was moving to Vegas. And he called me and he's like, "Hey, I got a job in Vegas. You want to go?" So I'm like, "Yep, let's go." Not have any idea what I'm talking about or what I'm doing. So when we first moved here in August of '98, he was a school teacher, and I was actually going to become a school teacher, but I had to wait till October to start. So I didn't have a job. He went to work, and we were in this apartment that a month after we moved out, it was condemned. So during the day, for a few weeks before I got a job, I didn't have anything to do. So I'm like, well, I could go for a run. So I literally went over to the closest Walmart. I bought a pair of like $10 running shoes, and I just ran down to the strip, and I ran back, and it was like a mile. And that was it. That's all I did. Just a couple miles here, a couple miles there. I never thought it'd become a thing. I really wasn't into it. It's just like, how can I waste 20 minutes and get away from this really nasty place we lived in? And then it just progressed, but it progressed slowly. I mean, for the longest time, I was doing 3 miles, 4 miles. I was running 5Ks and stuff like that. Ultra running wasn't even a phrase that existed. Trail running, I didn't know was a thing.
Yeah. When was this that you started doing this Walmart running?
99, around there.
That's right.
Yeah. So kind of funny story. My first 5K was about 6 months after I started running. And I just remember starting at the start line. It was at what used to be the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. At the start line, to my right was LL Cool J, and to the left was Ed McMahon. So it was weird. So that was how my running started. But
well, dang. Rubbing shoulders.
I guess. Yeah.
At the beginning. Wow. And 5Ks. Well, that's sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, and then since then, have you been running consistently since then, or have you kind of been like an on and off kind of guy?
It was just no, it was really consistent, but it was mainly just part of being in shape. I'd go to the gym, 3-4 days a week, and at one time I thought I wanted to be jacked and everything, and so I tried that. But then I would run, 2-3 days a week, the 3-4 miles. So, but it's been consistent since that day. But it didn't get crazy till years later. So,
man. That's a long time.
It is a long time.
Congratulations.
Yeah. I guess I enjoy it. I don't know. At the time, it wasn't like that passion that I think it is now. It's just something you did. Like, to stay in shape, you go run for a little bit. And that's just how I look at it. Like I said, it's literally just part of my fitness program. So.
Yeah. Well, same for me. That's why I got into it, right? To lose some weight.
Yep, exactly.
Lose some of that dad weight that I put on. So when did you start getting more serious? I don't know if you started doing some half marathons or marathons.
I did. That probably would have been distance. 2008, give or take. I made friends with a guy who did them, and he's like, "You should run a half marathon." And I was kind of like, "Why?" So I went out with him, and it was back-to-back years. I ran the same half as mainly a road half. It wasn't a trail or anything. And I really enjoyed it. Yeah. And then that became kind of my thing. I was going into Southern California and stuff and running them. And I probably did 20 some half marathons. And I was just like, that's a good distance. And I still think to this day, half marathon's one of the best distances, but, just really enjoyed it and never thought he'd go much beyond that. Cause I'm like, why would you need to run further than that? So that probably went on till 2013, give or take, something like that. So where I, did
Okay.
those, whatever, 15, 20 of them. So
Yeah, that's a lot. And then in 2013, did you do a
I did,
marathon?
I think it was 13 or 14. I did my first road marathon in Long Beach, California.
Nice.
I about died. I
Okay.
was so ill prepared. I didn't know how to train. I didn't know anybody who did these things. And oh my God, it was the worst experience. I don't
Yeah.
know why anybody ever does them. To this day, I think road marathons are the worst, hardest races on the planet. And then the next year, I did another road type marathon with my family up in the Seattle area. They all flew out there. I flew out there and met them. And that was the last of my road marathons. And then it progressed to what I do now. So,
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So, what makes the road marathon so
it's
terrible to
hard.
you?
So
And well,
if you, to me, if you want to, if you
yeah,
want to go out there
explain.
and say, "Hey, I want to do a 4 hour marathon or whatever," you have to push. You have to run, and it's a lot of effort for a long distance. And long story short, I met a guy one day and we did a long run together. And he told me about, ultra running. It is when I got into it. And he goes, the best thing about ultra running, he goes, it's a lazy man's way of running. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He goes, because when we get tired, we walk. And I go, yeah, that's a fact. We get tired, we walk. But when you're doing a road marathon, you set a thing. You got to move. And it's hard. So these people that do road marathons over and over, God bless you. That's hard work. I would rather run 30. I'd rather run 50. I'd rather run 100 do that 26 on the road. So,
Okay, I completely understand that. I just needed you to
yeah.
say it, so the people listening can know. If you're preparing for a
Yeah.
marathon, the vibe is so
Yeah.
different.
For
It's
sure.
like
Absolutely.
everyone's everyone's out there to freaking
Mm-hmm.
cruise and set
Yeah.
a super crazy
Exactly.
time goal.
Yeah, some of those times
Most
I don't
people,
even understand. Anything, 3 and under, I'm like, that makes no sense to me how you
yeah,
move your body that
that's
fast, that long. It's just
yeah. Seriously, considering doing like a 6.5 minute mile for
that
that
long. No.
long.
I
Oh my
I did a
gosh.
crazy weird run this weekend and I averaged like 7:30 during it, 7:40, which
Wow.
that's burning for me. My hamstrings are on fire. So imagine taking another minute off.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't. It's crazy. So
Yes, it's crazy. Yeah, I agree. My first marathon that was this January, so it was like 4 months ago. Yeah, it was I was running 9 minute,
which is a good
a little
pace.
over 9 minute. Yeah, like the whole
Yeah.
time, like I did progress up to 10 minute 30 at the end ish. I was starting to slow down, like the last 4 miles maybe. But I kept that 9 minute pace for almost the entire way, and it was
Yeah,
exhausting.
it is.
Like that's
Yeah. I mean, that's
oh my
impressive there. That
gosh.
9 minute is, or even, 9:30. That's cruising too. So man, good on you. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks. Yeah, it's even if that's about a 4 hour marathon. That's hard enough,
That was
man.
my first
Anyway,
one was
so yeah,
4,
the
and that
vibe.
was funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Nice. But yeah, vibe's so different. And you mentioned training was lacking, I guess, for
Yes.
the
Yeah.
marathon. Like what kind of training were you
I
putting
was
in for
putting up to
that?
maybe 9 miles. I just
9 miles
like
a
my
week?
long run was like 9, and that's all I did for
Okay,
the
your long
marathon.
run.
Yeah.
Oh
I
shoot.
was doing
Oh shoot.
3, 4, 5 runs a day or a week. I was getting it build up there, but it was 4 here, 5 there, then 9. And I'm like, well, if I can run 9, I could do that a couple times. No, I mean, I had
Yeah.
no point of reference. I really, like I said, I hadn't started reading books and doing podcasts or anything of that sort where I was just, winging it with no knowledge in it. It showed. I had no knowledge. I had no idea what I was doing. Didn't know how to eat, drink, just ran. So,
Hey, but you did
yeah,
it.
that's right. Yeah, I did it. Yep.
And you finished it.
I'm glad those are over. So,
Yeah, man. Well, good for you for getting there anyways. I mean, that's really hard. And now you know. Yeah. I would I think my longest practice run was 18
and see
miles for
that's a
the
good one. That's a legit. practice run for a marathon.
Yeah, it's a little bit
Yeah.
closer to that full
Yeah.
marathon distance. Oh my goodness, I can only imagine. Yeah, that would be hard. So you ran these couple marathons and you were like, that stunk. And you met a guy, you said you met a guy who told you like you should be doing ultra marathons
So
instead.
no, he was the one that got me into like the half marathons, and he's the one that suckered me into the full
Oh, he was.
marathon. And then I was talking up the
Okay.
full marathon that everybody should do it, that my family did. So kind of what got me into trail running, well, whatever, it doesn't matter, but it kind of got me into trail running is I read the book Born to Run and was like, oh, interesting. Still didn't know how to do it or whatever. And then just one day I went out to this one area near Red Rock, where I live now, and just kind of ran around this trail. It must have been a half mile. And I'm like, this is kind of fun. But I didn't really go much further than that for, I don't know, 8 months. Because I didn't know. I didn't know trail shoes existed. I just had no idea about anything. Yeah. So I kind of stumbled upon it more than anything.
Yeah. Did you do any hiking before?
Not really.
Too,
I mean, I've been to Zion and stuff like that, and did like Angel's Landing, but I was never. I enjoyed it. I love being out, but I like to joke, and my wife and I like to joke that one reason I like to trail run is we get bored hiking. It's like if there's a tree that we want to see, we want to get there as fast as we can and go see it. But yeah, I wasn't the most outdoorsy person. I mean, I was running outdoors and stuff, but not like, out in the mountains and stuff. So not really. It just kind of went from zero to right to trail. So
to trail, like road to trail, really. Interesting. Okay. So what led to you signing up for your, I don't know, did you sign up for some like trail halves and trail,
I did
like shorter trail races?
I did a trail
when you started
half.
doing that?
I did a trail 30K, 18 miles. And again, at the time, I'm like, that's plenty, that's enough. And I mean, I live in Vegas, and our trails they can be rough, and they're great. We have a million of them, and they're awesome. But after that 18 miler, I'm like, yeah, that's plenty. There's no need to go further than that. And then a trail marathon showed up a few months later, and then it went nuts. So
did those runs have a lot of verticality? Were they pretty up and down, or were they pretty flat?
18 or the 13 and 18 miler were, by our trail standards, are actually pretty flat. They had more like gradual gain. The marathon was the same. I can't remember, but it probably had 2,200 feet of incline, give or take. So nothing crazy. There was no like, oh my God, there's the top of this mountain,
pretty gradual,
up and down. It was more that, just steadiness for however many miles. So.
Okay. Very nice. Yeah, that reminds me of Southern Utah. Southern Utah running vibes. Okay. So you did a couple of these trail runs. Were you getting into like trail running gear at that point? You're like, I need to get some like
getting the
trail shoes,
the vests, the hats, the shorts, and I went and started dressing like a trail runner everywhere I went. Even though I don't know if I was technically one, but I bought into it full bore.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. And okay, so you started upping your miles, and what led up to you running? Or first of all, when did you like? I guess you read Born to Run, and Born to Run, does it introduce ultra running?
Yes. They talk about
as a
that
concept.
Tribe in Mexico that can run for hundreds of miles or whatever it is, and the writer took some ultra runners down there, and that's when I'm like kind of almost heard the phrase ultra runner for the first time. And it was like, oh my God, these people run 30 miles, 40, 50 miles, 100 miles. And it just blew me away. And, it kind of motivated me to think, could I do that? And I didn't think I could, because these people seemed, superhuman to me. And, but that was really the introduction to it, and starting to progress. So.
Yeah. Okay. So then, but you still hadn't signed up for one when you read it. You were, you started doing trail running sort of after that, I think.
It's just a couple races, and then just, the weekends I had to go hit the trails and mess around and try to figure things out. So
okay, what pushed you over the edge? What pushed you to sign up for if it was a 50K or 50 miler?
So the first one was a 50K.
What that looked like.
So kind of a, every, I guess, ultra runner, whatever you want to say, trail runner or ultra runner has kind of an origin story, I always laugh because I listen to, your podcast and tons of other podcasts. And when I do it, I laugh because never no like ultra runner's origin story is ever happy. It's not like they were coming from a great place in life and decide I need to go run 100 miles, it seems like. So in 2016, which was the year of my first ultra, September that year, it was not a real banner year. So in late February of that year, my oldest brother, the one I moved to Vegas with, got really, really sick. He ended up in the hospital. And so for a couple weeks, like 2-3 weeks straight, I'd go to work and immediately go hang out with him at the hospital for 3-4 hours, go home and repeat. And I just did that every day. Then the weekends was I'd go hang out with him, do what I could. And he ended up dying 3 weeks later. And so sadly enough, not to be the saddest person ever, but I was also at the end of my marriage was coming to an end, and we knew it, and we were just trying to kind of hold on to get through my brother's stuff. So I was dealing with some stuff. So my running became, just really my escape. And I, on weekends, again, I had Friday, Saturday, and Sundays off, and Friday, Saturday, Sunday was just, I'm out of here. And it was, out to the desert running and it wasn't anything nuts, but, run for 8 miles, 10 miles, 12 miles. And that's when the miles started to tick up because I was probably running through some stuff. And, and I'd head out like, I'm just going to go out for an hour. And next thing I was gone for 3. And it's like, wow, I just did, 15 miles. I didn't know that was, whatever. And that's when, I started doing a little research, figuring out what is ultra running, how do you do it, where do you do it, and found, I found 2 races, and one was in Chattanooga, Tennessee, is right outside of Chattanooga. I talked to my parents, and they're a whole nother story, and I'll try to keep it short, but I talked to them and told them what I wanted to do, and I'd been talking to them about my running and stuff, and so they were like, "Would you think we could do that?" And I'm like, well, I think anybody can do it. And so they must have been 8 years ago. So they would have been 63 and 64, 65 years old. They've been running, but, just staying in shape running. And so finally I'm like, what do you guys want to do this? And they're like, yeah, let's do it. So that was going to be the first one. But I ended up finding one that was 2 months earlier here in Vegas, or right outside of Vegas, out in the Valley of Fire, and that ended up being the one I signed up for to become the first one. So
with your parents,
the second one was with my parents. The first one was alone. I kind of cheated. I got to practice one in before I went and did one with my parents.
You got antsy. You were like, I need to do this now.
I just found it. I was needing something, and when I figured out how to sign up for ultras, I saw that one that was local, and I'm like, well, because one advice I saw through my research was they said, do your first one close by. Because, you're using your own house, your own food, your own bathrooms, your own bed, and then you go do it versus trying to pack and prep in a hotel and stuff like that. So that's why I chose the one I did for the first one.
Smart, man. Well, that's, I appreciate your openness and sharing like what was happening in your life. That's important. It's important for others to hear. It is common, I think, to start ultra running for whatever reason in hard times.
Yeah, my dad one time.
Why? We need harder things to do.
Actually, right, 2017, 2018, my dad asked me, I talk to him every weekend. They live in Illinois. And he just asked me, he goes, you ever think you're running from something? And I just laughed and I said, well, yeah, of course I am. He goes, okay, just making sure.
Oh, yeah.
So
openly admit that.
So it's like, it's such, I always, I tell everybody it's so good for up here as much as it is anywhere else. So yeah, it's what I needed at that moment. So.
Yeah, dang. I feel that, I'll just say that this podcast and running, I think I've mentioned in other episodes recently, really helped me get through. Like this podcast and running helped me get through my time of unemployment that happened the last few months. It was some of the roughest. I mean, it wasn't that long. I'm blessed that it wasn't that long. It was only 2 months, but that was 2 months of uncertainty if I was going to be able to provide for my family.
Yeah, that's
And
scary.
it was terrifying.
So I could understand
But
it. And it shows
running,
a lot about you that
I got all this extra time.
Well, that's true. You have extra time, but so it had to been so stressful. And stress is a very good reason to do nothing. And you kind of fought through that. So that's freaking impressive in itself. So.
Thanks, man. No, that's true. There's the part of you that's like, I just don't want to do anything. But man, does it feel good to have these conversations and to run and just get it out in those miles,
totally agree.
Whatever it
is.
A
lot comes out.
Just burn off my emotions. Yeah, man. Well, thanks for sharing that. And okay, so you signed up for this, and it was 2016, and you had 2 ultras you were signed up for. So, but this first one, what did training look like for your first 50K?
So, it was a trail one. So I, spent a lot of time out on the trail, obviously. And at that time I was still discovering a lot of trails. So I would just kind of drive to the west side of town or the south side of town. And, I get on the app like, oh, here it is. And I was doing, 7, 8, 9, 10 miles. I wasn't going too nuts on the trail. Probably because I wasn't prepared to, but my longer runs, which were, 15 to 20, I was doing those on the road. The rough part about it was, since that ultra was in September, all my training came through the summer. And I live in Las Vegas.
Oh, in Vegas.
So even at, 8, 9 a.m. sometimes we're pushing 95, 100 degrees. So what a lot of my training became on the road was, if I needed to do 15, I would find a grocery store or a gas station that was like 7.5 miles away or 8 miles away. And I'd run to it. I'd go inside, get a drink, steal their air conditioning, cool down, and then turn around and run home. And that became like every Saturday. I would just find a different gas station or a different grocery store at the halfway point. I'd run to it, cool down, run home. And that was about all my training for that one. Just trying to, and, run out in the desert in the summer. It's just, we don't have any trees, so it's miserable. So that's why a lot of my miles end up coming on the road, because I had to find some AC or I was going to die out there. So now I always try to do a lot of my ultras later in the fall or winter, so I can train in the fall and winter versus trying to deal with that nonsense out here. So,
yeah, that's interesting. So what are Vegas temperatures in like January?
Amazing. That's the nights get 50s, upper 40s, 50s in the daytime. Upper 50s, 60s. It is amazing training between November and March-ish, April. It is the best training on the planet. The weather's awesome. We get a little rain here and there, but it's and you can go running. My wife and I will go running at 5 p.m., 4 p.m. And it's gorgeous. But, here starting about now, we try doing it now and it's 90, so it makes it a little rough.
Yep. Dang, that is interesting. Thanks for sharing that, because that climate totally changes the way you would be training. And so that was through the summer that you were training, so you were doing this crazy. I love the gas station run thing. Maybe you remember the first episode with Miles, who went from 450 pounds to becoming an ultra runner. He was the first episode, but he did the same thing where he'd be running to gas stations, but he did it, because it was convenient, close to home, but also because he was trying to eat snacks and crap so that he could get used to eating like whatever to
and that's the other good
fuel.
Thing is, that all those places have restrooms if you need them. So
yes, and the restrooms. Good point. Oh my goodness. Real talk. I have to poop at least 2 times before I go for a run.
Yeah,
so that you.
Yes.
Yeah, or more. So at least 2 times. And if I don't, I have to poop in the
Yep.
middle of the run, and it's
Yep.
the worst. If I poop just one time, it's
No.
not good enough. So it's the worst thing, because I end up having to wake up like an extra 30, 45 minutes
To get it
early
all.
just so I can poop
Isn't that crazy?
before I go.
And the worst thing
It's
is
stupid.
before races when you're nervous and that's all you want to do and you almost can't, and you're like, this is really going to go bad here in about 3 hours. So because it's coming whether you want it to or not eventually. But so
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay. Thank you for letting me have a real moment there. So you're putting in your miles. That's awesome. Like, how many miles a week did
it wasn't
think
a
you were doing
ton. It
then?
was I thought it was a lot at the time because again of my just pure ignorance. Probably 35, probably maybe 30, 35.
Hey.
And I, since learned that's a cool down week, now. But that's what it was, because I'm like, well, I'm running 30 miles. I'll run 30 miles a week. So just didn't have any idea.
I wouldn't bash yourself. I wouldn't hit on yourself, Josh, because like frankly, it's hard to get enough time to put in the miles anyways. I mean, I'm probably going to do something similar for my first 50K. Like, I just don't have time to be running all the time. I've got my job and my family and like the podcast.
Exactly.
And like I'm just trying to do things. So
hours.
I'll probably end up doing near I know, probably around 30, 35 miles to prepare, just because I know that will get me to the finish line at least.
It definitely 100% will. May not be first, but who cares? You're finishing that thing, I guarantee it. So
so just getting at least the distance of the race, I feel like is a pretty good baseline, like as long as you get that many miles in a week. But anyway, sweet. So 30, 35 miles, and okay. Anything else pre-race that you want to share, or do you want to just get into race day?
I'll say one thing. It was just kind of interesting because in that same year, unrelated to everything else, my diet completely changed. So I was one of those that, thought, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but, just at the time, carbs, this, then protein and avoiding fat. And then literally 2016, it flipped to where I was eating and I didn't go keto or anything, but just copious amounts of fat, copious amounts of protein, and a lot less carbs. And it completely changed me. So, my diet was leading race day, and on race day, I basically lived on, bacon, pickles, sausages, stuff like that. I was almost taking in no carbs whatsoever, even during the race, because again, I didn't know. I just like, well, this is what I eat every day. Why would I change? So that was the big thing, and it, kind of worked. I finished, so, but it was so interesting, just all this stuff going on and the changes I was making in my life, and, bled right into that first race, so, morning of, and it's still to this day, like 6-8 eggs, a couple pieces of bacon, a couple pieces of sausage, some pickles, and, some coffee, move on with my day. So, again, didn't know better.
Not many carbs.
Yeah, no, not many at all. So,
but, and do you regret that?
No. I mean, that's still my diet to this day. But I've learned a lot of things to where, like right now I'm at, wherever I am, 9-10 days away from my next 100, I start introducing more and more carbs leading up to the race, because I've learned that's what you survive on out there. I didn't know that at the time. I just survived on, ignorance, I guess. But so coming up on race time, it changes. But my normal is still basically that. So.
Okay. Survived on ignorance.
Yeah.
That's the quote that I'm going to use to start the episode. Just kidding. I love it. Okay. Well, now, Josh, if I'd love for you to recount the day of your 50K in as much detail as you can recall, from the moment you woke up, like how sleep was, breakfast, how you felt before the race, how you felt when the race started, how you felt throughout the race, any memorable moments throughout the race until you reached the finish line. I want to hear all of it.
Yeah, and I was thinking about it, because it's been so long ago. So I remember morning of, I woke up. It's about an hour drive to the race. So, and if I remember right, the race started about 6. So I think I got about 3. I ate that big breakfast I talked about, and did all the bathroom stuff we talked about. And so, got that done, loaded up my vest and with my foods and whatnot and headed out. And I remember getting there way early, about an hour because I'd been doing road races. Road races, there might be, 4,000 people at it, 6,000 people, if you hit the right marathons or half marathons. So I got there super early because I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to get there and get in this corral. Well, at the start of the 50K, there were 6 participants. So, and we started at 6 o'clock and all the other races started like 7 o'clock. So there's literally 6 people there. And so I'm like, oh, this is what trail racing or ultra racing is. So they were way too early. And I remember just being, I slept fine. I was nervous on the way, but again, it just came from, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how to do anything. So when I got there, I literally just kind of walked around and stared at people to see what they were doing. And I saw someone putting on like body balm, and I'm like, oh, I think I have some of that. I've never worn it since, but I'm putting it on, I was, rubbing it everywhere. I'm like, okay, I'm ready. And I see them, changing shoes. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna change shoes now. I literally was just copycatting everything. And then people were like running, and I would run, I'm like, okay, I'm warming up like an ultra runner. And I remember they, gave us the racing, told us to go, and we take off. So the race the way it's set up, like I said, is out in Valley of Fire, which is about an hour, 45 minutes, give or take, outside of Vegas. Beautiful, beautiful landscape. And so the way the race went is, it was like 10 miles out, 10 miles back, 5 miles out, 5 miles back. So you kind of sort of ran the same course, just shortened versions of it as you got to your 31 miles. And I remember the first 10 felt great. The weather was beautiful. The sun was just coming up. It was awesome because it was, whatever, September, October there. And so it was nice. And then it got hot. I mean, hot. We were hitting like 90. And I remember and a few people saw me. They're like, I don't know how you do this. I run a lot with like long sleeves on and hoodies, like the running hoodies. And that's what I wore the entire time. I looked like I was in the Sahara Desert or something. I just remember running and not really thinking about a whole lot. Just, again, not knowing anything, just kind of running, doing the thing. And, every aid station, just fill up water and eating more pickles and pulling bacon out of my running pack and everything like that. And, it actually went okay. But then, I learned something at mile 20 where I will talk about it probably a little bit if we get into this other race. It's okay if we don't. But my brain is not a huge fan of mine. I struggle a lot just during runs. During life I'm okay, but during runs I have very negative thoughts, and this probably happens to a lot of people. But because of the out and back nature of it, at mile 20 we were in the 90-degree range. I'm sitting there just hot, dehydrated, hungry, not knowing what's going on. I turn around and my car is 30 yards away, and my brain's like, just get in your car, dude. And it's like, what are you doing out here? You don't belong out here. I don't know why you're doing this. What do you have to prove? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just sitting there staring at my car, filling up my water bottle. And I'm like, I don't think that's how it works. I just turned and took off to go do the other 5 and then turn around and come back. So it was really a unique experience. One that, a lot of people talk to me about running because they know what I do. But I always say, I'm not here to tell you to be an ultra runner, but I need to change that because you almost need to, because boy, do you learn a lot. And some of it's scary, but that's what I dealt with for the next 5 miles out and the next 5 miles back was just a lot of self-negative talk and a lot of self-doubt. And it was really weird because I usually just kind of run pretty low key, middle of the road. And it was just, turn around. What are you doing? What are you doing? This is stupid. And so it's not the most uplifting story, but I finished. I felt great at the end and I didn't know what to do. So I just ate a large pizza and, called it a day.
Wait, but when you crossed the finish line, did you feel great, or were you? Was your head still like destroying?
No,
you,
I was. As soon as I did it, it was like, oh my God, I can't believe this occurred. I couldn't believe it that it happened. And I get in the car and I didn't know how to cool down. I just got in the car and started driving an hour back, and I called my parents because they knew. And I'm like, they're like, well, and I'm like, I did it. And they're like, what? I said, I did it. I'm done. I'm driving home. And I'm always big into the outliers of the world, the freaks of nature that we see. And they're like, holy crap, they go, how long did it take you? And I don't remember my exact time. It was probably 7 hours or something. Might have been more than that, actually.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, whatever. I started at 6 o'clock, whatever time it is now. I said, you're not going to believe this. There was a guy done in like 5 hours. He probably went home, took a nap, took a shower. He might be at work right now, and then immediately talking to my parents immediately turned to that guy. My dad's like, I don't know how that's humanly possible. How'd he get done so fast? And that just became the thing. But, then I went home and the same thing. It's just like, wow, and it was worth every moment of the self-doubt, every step, everything. I just couldn't believe it. And I went to work and, and people were like, did you do this? And because all of them ran and were healthy and stuff like that. But they're like, did you really? And I'm like, I guess, I did it, and so it was through that was just a excitement of the finish. And it was amazing to me. So, and it sounds cliche or whatever, but it literally changed my life. It did. Because then it was like, oh my God, now I got to see what else is in this world, in this exact world of ultra running or trail running. So.
Yeah. Was your first, like right after finishing, where you're like, okay,
yeah,
time to sign up for a 50 miler?
Well, yeah, that came a little later. I 50K'd it to death for a while. But,
okay.
Again, just at 50 miles, like that's when you start doing it. Well, that's from my house to wherever. And you're like, that's impossible, So, but,
and it's like a whole nother 19 miles.
And it's a whole different 19
huge
miles.
Addition. Yeah. Yeah, it's a huge addition. Do you mind if I ask too, Josh, like in that race and maybe in other races you've done, when you like get in that headspace and your brain's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? This is stupid. What keeps you going? What kept you from going to the car?
Fear of disappointment. And I think the fear of disappointing probably others more than anything at that moment. Because, everybody knew I was doing it. My parents knew I was doing it. My family knew I was doing it, and they couldn't believe that it could be done. Not that they doubted me. They're like, oh, you're going to do this. But when you're just sitting there, I always say, your head, you have multiple, I always call him the little guy, one little guy that's not a fan of mine. There's the other little guy, that is like, no, you can't stop. How are you going to get in a car and call everybody and say, I didn't do it? And, having a DNF is not the worst thing in the world. But at the time, I didn't know that existed. And that was the other thing, was I didn't know you could quit. There was a little guy telling me to, but I'm like, no, that's not how this works. When you play basketball, you don't stop in the third quarter. You finish, Play golf, you don't stop on the 12th hole. Play 18. And that was really kind of like I didn't have an option. It's like going to work. You wake up, you go to work. You work all day, you come home. And that was kind of my day at work, I guess. And yeah, just that thought of calling people going, yeah, I couldn't do it. Just, woo, it gave me the willies, so, but.
Yeah, that's a fantastic comparison, honestly, though. Like, yeah, you don't see people in the middle of a basketball match going,
yeah, I'm good.
Well, I guess I'm done. I'm tired, so I guess I'm going home. That's not a thing. Interesting. Interesting thought. Well, good for you for finding that reason, whatever it is, to keep going. Yeah, that can be hard to find.
Oh, and you could, you could find, I don't even want to call it an excuse, but you could find every reason on the planet to stop. And, there are some very viable reasons to stop. But, your brain, I always like to tell people, is so selfish. It wants all the food. It wants all the attention. It wants everything. It wants you to sit on the couch. And it's a tough fight to fight, that sometimes telling your own brain to, hey, dude, shut up. No, I'm not stopping. So.
Man, do I know it. Yeah, thanks for talking about that fight, because it's real and not even just in running. You're fighting that other self, the self that would have you achieve less. Man, constant battle. But man, congratulations! So happy for you that you were able to start it that day, and I know you've achieved so much more since then. I'd love to hear, like, I know you have one prepared, another race you want to share, but I'm intrigued what happened with the 50K that happened after that with your parents.
I'm actually glad you asked.
Did they finish a 50K?
I'll tell you, I'm not telling you who put on your show, but those two would be an amazing interview. So my parents, in a nutshell, are just, they're just normal people. My dad worked at J.I. Case building construction tractors for 30 years and then bought some farmland, and that's what he does now. My mom um, was a school, I mean, she raised all us kids, and then kind of a funny, weird story. My mom and I graduated from the same college on the same day with the same degree. So we walked across stage together.
What?
So yeah, so she became a school teacher in her 40s. Then she started running in her 60s, and by, I don't know, she'll yell at me, I don't know the time frame, but by 60, 61, she was doing like 35Ks a year. And my dad would just go to him and he, whatever, he did his running thing. And then, as I started to kind of build up on this, and it kind of opened the door to people going, this is a thing. That's when I convinced them to do a 50K, and they just trained their butts off. And my mom was still working full time. My dad had since retired, but was still farming. So they drove from Illinois to Nashville, where I met them. I flew there and hung out for a few days, got in the car. We drove down Chattanooga, and it was one of the coolest experiences. My parents ran together. I ran by myself, and it's actually a really neat course. I don't think they put the race on anymore, but it was a 7-mile, I call it a lollipop, where it's like out and then it makes like a loop and then you come back down the stick of the lollipop. And what was kind of neat about this race is, so you had to do like 4 loops and then there was like a weird, whatever, couple mile stretch, but you could run the lollipop any direction you wanted. So so I kind of went out, did another one the other way. And it's like, that one felt easier. So I just did that the whole time. But yeah, so it's kind of neat, but it was so amazing. I went out, had, my big experience of the one and worked through some things, and was sitting there watching my parents, I got done, a couple hours before them, see them coming through, starting their last leg out, where the last couple, I mean, oh my God. I mean, we're talking, in their 60s. My dad and mom's always been in shape, just my dad lifts weights and he works hard and, not ultra marathoning shape, but just they've stayed healthy people. But watching him do that, coming up this last little incline before the finish, and I was running, like taking pictures, and you could see there was nothing left in their legs, but they never stopped running. It just was this, lumbering up this hill, and my dad would get a little ahead of my mom and turn around and look at her, and she'd just nod and keep going. And, and they crossed that finish line together. And the excitement that I felt 2 months earlier was tripled just watching that. Because I mean, what an amazing accomplishment. They'd only been running for whatever it had been 4 or 5 years. And again, think of my story of what got me going. So we're talking about their son passing away, and talking about every reason not to, but that gave them every reason to. That became kind of their getaway. Go out, spend 6 hours out on the road on a Saturday together, just running, walking, doing whatever to get in shape for this. So it really geared their focus towards doing something that was absolutely spectacular. So, but
man, how cool is that?
It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. There's a picture that's still on my phone to this day that is them finishing. I don't remember who took it or how, because it was from behind, and the 3 of us walking away. And it's one of my most cherished things, just seeing those two literally right after. And one last story about that is, we went back to the hotel and took a shower and everything. We went to go get some pizza. And we got to the little pizza place, and I walked up and I opened the door and I was going to hold it for my mom, and they weren't there. And I turned around, and the 2 of them were standing there in the parking lot, like negotiating with each other, trying to figure out how they were going to get over the curb, because their legs were so shot they couldn't swing their legs up onto the sidewalk to get in the pizza place. So I just remember sitting there laughing. Of course, my mom's like, you could help me. And I'm like, no, this is just too funny, so but that was, their introduction. So, and they're still running to this day. They do the Leadville race that I do every year. And yeah, it's amazing. So,
which Leadville
we do
race?
The marathon every year, and then they do what's called the heavy half. It's 15.5 miles. It's one of the best races on the planet. My dad has done it they had a COVID cancellation, but I think he's done it 6 times. My mom's done it, I think, 3 or 4. So yeah, so when we talk about elevation gain, Leadville has it all. I mean, you're talking, 5,000 feet and 15 miles or whatever it is, 4,000 feet. It's crazy. Yeah.
Really?
In their 70s now, still humping it. So,
Man, that is
yeah,
fantastic. Yeah, side note, you should connect me with your
they'd be
parents
an
because I would
interesting
love to have
story.
them on. I'd love to have them on because I haven't interviewed, I don't think, anyone in their 70s,
Yeah.
definitely not even their 60s probably. Are you in your 50s,
I
Josh?
turned 50
40s?
this year. Yep.
50?
Yeah. Big 50. So, yeah.
Welcome to
Yeah.
50. Nice. My dad's recently in his 50s as well. He's
It's a good age.
weird.
I
It's a
always
weird
joke
thing
it.
probably.
40s and 50s are
Yeah.
the best because you can do the most minor thing, go run 2 miles. I'm like, oh my God, you're 49 and you run 2 miles. It's like,
That
what do you want me to do at 49? But yeah, it's just like, I think it's the greatest thing because people when they're younger, you're like, oh, I didn't know you could move at 45. It's like, okay, you'll be fine. Trust me. So,
proven. Yeah, that's what I love about ultra running is that it's so what's the word? I mean, anyone can
anyone
do
can do it.
it
Yep.
regardless of
Yep. Well, I mean,
age.
the
Like,
40-year-olds are who win it. I mean, you get in
yeah,
those big ones, and that's who's in it. It's amazing. So, yeah, and I mean, there's a race out
yeah,
here in Vegas that's put on every year. This year, in the 48-hour one, there was seven. I think there were 7 guys in the 70s and above running it, doing a 48-hour race. Yeah,
yeah.
crazy. It's
That's
amazing.
I remember talking to Laura. I can't remember her last name at this moment, but Laura, who's on the podcast a few months ago, made a friend with an 80-year-old
Yeah, I know that.
running.
Yep.
Yeah, you
Yep.
remember that running a 40s? I think it was Race of the
That's the
Ages, so it
one.
was based on how
Yeah.
old you were. So that guy was running like
80
80 hours.
hours. Yeah. That is, again, but like you
What
said, I
the
guess if your
heck?
feet still go forward, you might as well be running.
That's so crazy. Guy ran 100
Mhm.
miles and he's 80. That
Nuts.
is
Yeah.
awesome. So I love that about
Yeah.
ultra running. So yeah, connect me with your
Oh,
parents
well,
after this.
I'd
But
enjoy it. Yeah.
okay, yeah, if they're willing
Oh,
to,
yeah.
that'd be sweet.
They're a fun conversation. So,
Good. Okay, I want you to be able to share your memorable ultra experience that's happened since your 50Ks. So that was in
mhm.
2016. You've had 8
8
years
years.
of time
Yeah.
to run other
So,
things. So like,
this,
what's a crazy story you
in
have?
9 days or whatever, I keep forgetting what it is. That will be this 100 coming up will be my 30th Ultra. Um, but the
Wow.
one I want to talk
Woo.
about for a couple specific reasons, but is my first 100. And I'll keep it shortish because I can go on forever. But long story short, it was held in Pekin, Illinois, which is in the center of the state of Illinois, in this state park at huge hills, 2 river crossings. It was crazy. It was a 10-mile loop. So I picked that one for a couple of reasons. One, like I said, my family are all either in Illinois or on the Illinois-Iowa border in Iowa. So when I thought of it, first person I talked to was my girlfriend, now wife, and it's like, I want to do this. Would you go? And she's like, well, of course. She's a runner. She's a freak herself. She's like, yep, I'm going, of course. I said, okay. So I called my family and said, hey, I want to do this, but I don't think I can do it if you guys don't show up. And to every person in my family, except for one, my brother, he lives out here. He just can get time off work. They all showed up. So every lap I ran, except for the first one I had to run by myself, each person from my family or one of our family friends took a turn and ran with me. So literally, and I can't remember the exact order, but it's like
Oh,
second lap was like my sister, my third lap was my dad, my fourth lap was one of my brothers, and then his family friends, and then my sister-in-law, and blah blah blah, and went on. And my wife ran 2 laps with me. Yeah, I think 2 laps with me also. And every lap I'd come through,
how long were these
10,
laps?
10 laps, and
10
they were
miles.
great. So time when we would get on little Zoom meetings or whatever and talk, and they're like, "Well, what is our job as a pacer?" And I go, I finally was like, I think pacer is actually a bad term because I'm setting the pace. I'm not running with you, you're running with me. And they're like, oh, that makes sense. I said, I don't know what you do. I said, I think you just keep me alive, keep me talking, keep me going. And they're like, okay. So they were all so great. None of them had done this before. And we just head out, and I would just get in front of him, and whoever's with me would just cruise behind me. And anytime I talk, they'd respond. No one really tried to push a conversation or anything. And I'll get to one of the big story I wanted to tell, but I just, it was in that moment, even before I did something like that, I knew there's zero chance I was doing it alone. I couldn't have done it alone. I wouldn't have made it. There's no way. It took me, I think, 31 hours to do this 100.
Whoa.
Yeah, which is slow. I mean, that's a long haul.
Well,
and
it's just long.
yeah, it's just, and I think it was at whatever 2, 3 in the morning, and I was running with my sister-in-law, and we were coming up like mile 6, 7, whatever. And I looked at her and I'm like, hey Sheila, I go, do you see that horse up there? She goes, yeah, I saw him earlier. There's like 4 or 5 of them. I said, no, I don't, not them. I said, the one right in front of us. And she goes, what horse? I said, the one with the guy with the blue shirt on it. And she goes, yeah, okay. So we ran like 100 yards, and I just turned around. I'm like, oh, never mind, that's a stick. And she, all of a sudden, that just kind of freaked her out. So we come in to, the 10 miles done. I'm switching shoes, switching socks, whatever, eating something. And I remember my sister-in-law, he just saw a man on a horse. And she was like so worried. She's like, what do we do? And my wife's like, we go run. Yeah, I think that's okay. And then, it just went out. And it was just the most amazing experience. And I'll tell you this one story I have to tell because it's my favorite story about my life. And I'll get to the end of that. So I'll tell my one. I'm sorry, kind of jumping around on you. But so the first long run she ever paced me on was my first 100K. We'd been dating for only like 9 months, and it was on her birthday. So she was a keeper that she came running with me on her birthday for 100K. And she had to work. She worked graveyard the night before. And so she got off at 8 a.m.
Wow.
Couldn't sleep. So she just drove out to the desert, found me. So at mile 39 is when I met up. I saw her mile 26, and then she went out to mile 39 to meet me and started running with me. So I got to mile 39, and when I came in, I just looked at her and I said, there was something really wrong. She's like, okay, what is it? And I said, I don't know. My stomach just is in knots. I can't drink. I can't eat. I can barely move. She's like, okay, what do we do? And I'm like, I'm not sure. Fast forward about 2 minutes, my buddy who gave her a ride out there, I was leaning on his car, throwing up on it. And everything I'd eaten just comes flying out. Well, I felt like $1 million, so we take off. So that race ends great. We end at like midnight. A few months later, I run my first 50-mile run. So I'm running now when it's kind of loop race, and she's outpacing me and running with me. And we get to mile 40, and so I come around, and she's waiting for me to go out with me. And I just look at her and said, there's something wrong. She's like, what is it? I said, my stomach. It's just something wrong. And she's like, okay. And, tried to give me some water and stuff and battled through it. And I just like, man, it's just terrible. So fast forward to the 100. I come around, 4th lap, mile 40. I sit down, and I look at her and I said, hey, there's something wrong. And she goes, yeah, I know. I said, my stomach really hurts. And she goes, yeah, I know. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, you are the sweetest human I've ever met. What is this attitude? And she looks at me and she goes, your stomach always hurts at mile 40. We're in the 100K, the 50-miler, and I knew it was going to hurt today. She's like, you'll be fine. And I'm like, I wonder if this is in my head. And literally ate something and just, it was kind of gone. So it was the weirdest thing. At the same time, every race, it was just a knot of terribleness. And she just saw it come and it was like, yeah, okay, it's fine. And just ate and went.
That is funny.
Yeah, so that race, the last lap I did with her, and literally the race ended on this tiny incline through this grassy field. And someone took a picture of her where literally her hand is in my back, just pushing me up the thing. I have my trekking poles, and there's nothing. The kind of funny thing about it is when you finish something that long, you're just relieved.
Is this the 100?
Yeah, this is the 100. You're just relieved. You're excited.
Okay.
But it's also funny because when I kind of learned this watching documentaries on mountain climbers, someone said, when you climb the top of the mountain, there's no parade. There's nothing up there. And you get up there and you're like, why'd I do this? So we get done with the 100. I come running up, I get it. And there's 10 of my family members, whatever. And they're like, all right. And you just stand there for a second. You're like, wow, I did it. Then you stand there and then you go, all right, well, let's go home. And that's kind of, it's just kind of the end. You out there for 31 hours. Everybody puts this effort into it, puts this time, put all this stuff. And then it's just done. And it's the greatest feeling ever that you're like, there should be like a ticker tape parade or something going on, but you're just done. It's the weirdest feeling. So, but yeah, that race is it just, and I know everybody on your podcast has really talked about it. It takes a group of humans to accomplish this. Anybody that looks at me and says, and I had this attitude before I met her, I'm going to do this alone. I don't need anybody to run with me. I don't need anybody to train with me. I don't need to prepare with anybody. I could do this alone. And there wouldn't have been 150 miler, 100K, 100 miler finished without her, without my family. It just wouldn't have happened. You have to have it. You have to have that support of someone's heart. Even if they're just waiting at the finish line for you, knowing they're there, I think is so huge. Going, okay, I want to quit, but they're down there and I got to get to them.
That is true. Yeah, it's probably a lot easier to give up if you're just depending on yourself. Like you're just accountable to yourself. So I was like, yeah, I can end this. It's fine. But when someone's waiting at the finish line, it's like,
running with you, and all they ask are, "You good?" And you just go, "You know what? I am good." Say it out loud and just keep moving. So yeah, it's really important. And then, with the one I have coming up, same thing. She's going with me, and my parents are actually running in it. My dad's doing a 24-hour race. My mom's doing a 12-hour race. So we'll kind of have, because we have the same course, we'll all kind of have that support of seeing each other every loop around and stuff. So yeah, it's so just vital. Just, I guess if I had advice to give any of your listeners, if you're running alone, find a friend. Find someone to do it with. It's amazing. So.
Well said. I have to ask you about this wife of yours that's running with you all the time. Does she run entire ultra marathons with you? Is she like doing that with you, or is she just kind of paces
me? But
on most of
during my with that 100 miler, she did 20 miles. During my second 100 miler, she's right here, 35. Yeah, she ran 35 miles pacing me. So it's funny because she's never signed up for and done an ultra marathon, but she's done ultra marathon.
Oh, she has.
Like she's done it for an 8-hour race. We did that. We hit ultra, distance. That was like her first ultra. But yeah, she just runs. Then in that, 100K, she ran from mile 39 to 62 with me. And before that, she'd never run more than 15 miles. So she's, yeah, I got lucky.
Well, if you can hear me, you're a machine. Congratulations.
She is smart. Well, she absolutely is.
That's awesome.
With the one coming up, she told me she has a goal of how many miles she wants to run with me. I'm like, what is it? She's like, you'll see. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be something. So I look forward to it. Yeah, she's awesome. So.
Man. Well, that's fun. Does she run her own races at all, or do any other things that are fitness, like her thing? I'm just curious what her thing is.
Physical freak. But she does do a lot of races, but we generally do them together. For example, we went to Nashville in December, and ran in this race called it's not the Tennessee Mile. Whatever. I think it's called the Tennessee Mile or whatever. It's an hour, or it's a timed one. So they have like a 6-hour, a 12, a 24, and a 48. So we did the 6-hour because we actually wanted to have a vacation built into it too. So it's just a 1 mile loop, and it's called the Murder Mile. There's actually a documentary about this thing. It's amazing. So we went and did the Murder Mile for 6 hours, and she actually won the race. So went out there, first time she ever did it. Yeah. And she did 20 miles in that 6 hours. So, I say she runs with me. I was technically running with her because when we had time, we had enough time in our head for either 2 or 3 laps because to get to the 6 hours. And I just looked at her. I said, 2 is probably good. She goes, yeah. And she's really calm and laid back. And she's like, yeah, let's just do 3 though. I'm like, all right, 3 it is. And that was the one extra mile that she wanted to do that ended up helping her win the entire race. So it was really cool. So.
Man, well, that's super cool that you both are running together. Haven't interviewed many dual running couples. Like it's usually like one psychopath in the family.
And I listened to the one that he had the couple on that got into the argument during their 50 miler. Yeah, that one was funny. I can understand it for sure, but fortunately when we run, we really have a good time. But listening to him was like, oh, I get that. It's hard. But so.
Yeah, that's so cool. It's cool that you have that built-in running buddy. I know many other folks just, find running friends, and
Yeah.
that's their running crew, and they go and travel together
Which,
and do
can be
runs.
just as
Cool
useful and
to
beneficial.
just
Yeah.
as good. Yeah, for sure. But pretty cool. You have that built in. Anyway, that's really cool. And I appreciate you sharing your story of your 50Ks and your 100-miler, and how it felt when you crossed the finish line as well. Because it's different every time.
Yeah, 100%. It's well said on your part. It is. I mean, some you just, go across and you're just like, I got to get home. It just was awful. And other ones you're just like, high-fiving yourself like, oh my God, I can't believe we did it. So
yeah, so interesting how that is. Josh, I'd love to wrap up by asking you if you could go back and give advice to your past self that maybe was just getting into running or just considering the ultras and getting into this and doing this. Is there what advice would you give your past self?
As far as, the running aspect, I would have told myself to do it sooner because I, didn't, like I said, didn't know its existence. And I think probably the biggest advice I'd give from the me that did actually start doing it in, like 2016 was to enjoy it, because it became such a thing. Like, I must accomplish, I must do this, I must do that. And it's like, and now I do them and they're still hard and I still got to work, but they're fun, and that would be the thing. Just like, dude, just remember you're out here, put a smile on your face. You don't have to run serious, and I've learned that, now I'm the guy who waves at everybody and says, good morning, everybody. And I just would have went back and just said, and I think I would have, said enjoy, because I think I would have remembered them more, because I knew we were going to talk about my first one, and it was really hard for me to come up with a lot of the details, because it was kind of like, that's done, what's next? That's done, what's next? And I'm not super competitive because I don't win anything. I'm a middle of the packer at best. But that would have been my thing. Hey, man, enjoy this, remember this. Now enjoy this one and remember this one, versus that's done, where's my next one at? So that would probably be my advice. And it'd probably be my advice to everybody is, yes, it's a grind. Yes, it can suck or whatever, but it's an absolute grind. But remember that grind and remember why you did it. And when you're done, smile, pat yourself on the back. Oh my God, we did that. And just remember why you lace those shoes up, put that vest on, step out there. And that would have been my big thing, to say, dude, just enjoy this time, because, it's not going to be forever. And I've luckily learned that. I just learned it probably a few years later than I would like to.
I appreciate that. Because I think I might be not living that as much as I should. So I really appreciate hearing that. Yeah, I'm in the beginning of my ultra journey, so I do look at these and I'm like, yeah, but what's next?
Right, yes.
And and that's an exciting and good thing probably, but I am wondering if I'm rushing it too much. I was thinking of signing up for a 50-miler right after my 50K, but I'm also having a kid right around that time, having another baby right around then. I was like, maybe I should just slow down, because
the timing
there's
seems
no
right. You might want to get it
here.
done.
I have. It's true. And that's why I'm because I'm already going to be trained up. But I'm also having a kid, and also there really is no need to rush.
No, there's not.
Is no
I
need
agree
to
with you.
rush.
I agree. But
Yeah.
you'll know. I mean, it's like anything
there
else.
will
You'll sit there one day and be like, what, it is right. Or, no, I do need to wait. And, people always say, listen to your body. Well, listen to yourself too. And with these things, because, I've done that too. It's like, I'm done with that. What's next week? What's next month? And that's silly, because what am I, what am I in a hurry for? So, but hopefully you do it, because I want to hear about it. So look forward to hearing all about it. So
I'll let you know if that's what ends up happening. But it's a busy year. Just there's a lot going on between having babies and trips, and I've got a triple race series already signed up, and that ends in my first 50K.
It's a weird pastime we selected, because it does take time. It's not, even playing golf for a couple hours on Saturday or whatever. This is days and days of hours and hours. And like I said, with what you have going on, your babies and, job and everything, it's hard. And it's so commendable that you are able to still prepare for that 50K and even think about the 50 miler with everything going on. So, because a lot of people are like, nah, I'm good. And it's amazing.
Oh, thanks, man. That's true. It's hard to fit it in, but you gotta, because it's just, it's also what gets me through.
This is exactly, it's well said.
This is what gets me through the other things.
Exactly. So.
Well, thanks for that advice. Again, enjoy it.
Yep.
Enjoy
even
the
when
process.
it's miserable. Find a way to enjoy. At least enjoy it afterwards. So.
Yeah, for real. That's great advice, Josh. Thanks so much for sharing today. I'll try and link Josh's like Strava if he's, I don't know if you're on Strava. If you're, well, I'd love to link you in awesome. The show notes if you're down. And I know Josh also has a sock company, and I think athletic socks is a part of that, and other varieties of socks.
I'm going to want your address when you can text it to me, because I'm going to send you a couple pairs and see what you think. So you can use them in that training.
Oh, well, thank you. Heck yeah. But yeah, we'll link to that in the show notes as well. So he's got some sweet socks that could be good for training. But awesome. Thanks again, Josh.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It was awesome.
Hey, your host, Brendan here. I just wanted to thank you personally for listening to today's episode. As someone preparing for my own first ultramarathon, I've found these conversations to be super valuable, and I hope they are for you as well. Whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or somewhere else, make sure to follow or subscribe so you know when the next episode comes out. Also, make sure you check out the show notes of this episode. There's a link to sign up for the Ordinary to Ultra email newsletter, to join our Facebook and Strava groups where you can meet other people striving to run their first ultra marathon, and see any links that our guests may have provided as well. Thanks again, and we'll catch you in the next episode.